going through a real state of crisis, and obviously over the last 10 years there's been a great deal of interest in terms of the relationship between landscape and architecture, landscape and urbanism. And when we really try and see the proposals, projects that have been developed, especially in Europe during this period, I think the work of Adriaan Geuze and WEST is really the work that stands out for addressing the relationship between, in particular, the relationship between landscape and urbanism in ways that somehow transcends some of the naturalism that was very much part and parcel of traditional landscape architecture. And I think with these projects, Adriaan has managed to really introduce a very interesting and critical relationship at a very large scale, for example, of neighborhoods and suburbs in particular in the Netherlands. And I would like you to join me in welcoming Adriaan Geuze today.
Thank you for this introduction. Tonight I want to experiment with a lot of slides on you as a bombardment. So when it takes too long, you see the next slide, please help me. I overeat it a little bit today. I was overeaten because, you know, in Holland you cannot buy any nice cake, and here I saw plenty. So I feel like this. Carrot cake is really exceptional in Holland. And brownies don't even exist, really not existable. Can I have a slide? Am I clear in the audience? Yeah? Because I can manipulate this microphone. A little story. After the Second World War, there was in Holland a baby boom, and this generation, let's say, was adult generation in the 60s, and they became hippies. You understand that? And they were about 20 years. This is a disaster for Holland. So Dutch population, they dominate Dutch population, and you know that Holland is a sort of paradise, social paradise, worse than Scandinavia, and the Dutch dream is to build and to support anybody to build these houses, family cars. Everybody has a row house and a garden, and since this baby boom, there is a need for about 100,000 houses each year since the Second World War. So that's also to clarify the success of Dutch architecture, that there is such an incredible amount of building questions, building commissions for especially housing, that an architect, 25 years old, can start immediately a job, can open his own practice. And then they freak on row housing, which are, typology of them are all similar. And the production is really incredible, and Holland is changing from a sort of very nice polder landscape into Los Angeles. And of course, in the 60s, this was the first time this grow of the suburban area became sort of visible, and you might know that in that era the environmental ideas of these hippie culture became dominant. So they started to complain about the growth of the Netherlands, about our tradition of building new landscape, which was started already in the 13th century. And since late 60s till now, all of Dutch society, public opinion, is complaining about the changing of the landscape. And in that area, in that time, I decided to become a landscape architect, which turns out now a wrong decision because I am not appreciated at all. Nevertheless, the national planning in The Hague, they produce enormous amounts of paper, provoking Dutch landscape every year with a new 100,000 houses. And 3 years ago, there was a decision that there was a lack for 1 million houses. So the government decided to build this 1 million in the next 10 years again. And we were asked to do an exhibition. Since our office was too young and we couldn't exhibit enough, we decided to make a model of these 1 million houses. Originally meant to put a model on the square in front of the parliament in The Hague. But the model was so big and needed so much people to be made that it couldn't be done, let's say, in half a day, which is the maximum time you can claim on that square because of democratic reasons. You know, you cannot take the square for a day because there are 2 or 3 demonstrations each day. And you cannot take for one issue the whole day. Oh, this is not a joke, this is reality. I mean, in Brussels there are about 9 demonstrations a day. 3 for Flanders and 3 for the French-speaking part, and about 3 for European business. And they all have different tracks even. I recently discovered this. So we built a model. We had to do it in the Architect Institute, and but the institute didn't like the idea that we needed all the rooms, everything, the restaurant, the bathrooms, the exhibition hall, the big one, the small one, the auditorium, everything. And they didn't like the idea to build this model of 1 million houses. So we were kicked out, and then we colonized the space around the National Institute of Architecture in Rotterdam. We went to Delft, to the Dean of Delft, and asked him to supply 30 students. We offered them t-shirts, and we built this model. It took a day. At 6 o'clock the model was ready and opened by a parliament member. And this model really showed that the amount of houses, this was just, let's say, you can also understand this as an experiment. With this amount of houses, there is hardly any reason to make urban plans. I mean, it doesn't, because we asked the students to make a maximum quality and to make their own vision about what kind of pattern. But when you add so much, you know, the number, the scale of it, you won't distinguish any difference. I mean, it makes no sense. And we were really shocked, and not only we. Somebody was that alarmed about the tremendous effect of seeing this, that he called Rem Koolhaas, and Rem was really amazed as he was never before. He walked over these houses. So you might understand that there are a lot of chances for young architects, as you consider as well that Holland is a very good society for subsidies, even subsidies for talent and for traveling and for studying. Then I can really give you a lot of. Well, I would say go there to work instead of staying here. Another, this dream of the social paradise, which is now more or less based on the philosophies of everybody is equal and make everybody happy and heal the world with green, based on this hippie culture, resulted also in, let's say, the so-called polder model, which is a model in our political model in which we never quarrel, we always make compromises with each other. So unions and big companies and government always come together every day. They have special committees for doing this and making compromise for all of society. In public space and in city planning, these committees and institutes produce an incredible amount of zoning laws and paperwork. And we made last year an exhibition in Groningen in the most hippie architecture in Holland, the Koop Himmelblauw Pavilion, about what's going on in Holland and about our own dreams. So this was a library with only the national zoning laws since, let's say, '68. Then we organized a lot of films and movies from the 50s. Most of them, Polygoon journals they were called, were propaganda movies to, let's say, to build up Holland and to give new courage to the people and to advise them not to spend too much money and to invest in the economy, etc. And we used one of these movies as a sort of slogan for our exhibition. This is, let's say, could have been a friend of my grandfather. He is standing next to a whale. You thought that this was architecture, but this is a fish. In the 50s, the Dutch, because they kept the butter to be exported to collect money for building up their country, they needed fish oil to produce margarine. And then the government decided to build a whale fishing flat. So they ordered an enormous ship to change the whale into oil, and they produced about 20 smaller ships to catch the whales, and then people from the polar were sent to Antarctica, and they officially arranged 6% quotum of the whole, let's say, possible whale population to be catched. And this ship, the Willem Barents, was a really 300-meter size ship, and all of the Dutch people were very proud that they could catch whales. And let's say in December the ship left Rotterdam. All the quays were full of people waving and to say bye-bye, and then in 3 months later they came back full with oil. And this was, let's say, in a propaganda movie. Not only one, but about 3 or 4 movies had been made about this courage, about this heroic action of the Dutch. And this was, let's say, 15 or 10 or 15 years before the hippies came. And I think this was a very, let's say, symbolic part of the Dutch post-war society, ready to build up a country, ready to make completely new polders, ready to make a lot of infrastructure, ready to create, let's say, a gas supply all over the country. They did a tremendous job, and they did this with a sort of heroic feeling. They were very proud of it. And even my grandpa, he was a civil engineer. He was concerned with dikes. I always recognized when I went there as a small kid as sort of, we're gonna do it. Let's make Holland. And this, for us, is a dream. This generation of the 50s, before the nightmare of the hippie culture came. So we did an exhibition on this issue in which we proposed to make a really, also with ecological interventions, new land and new things in the Dutch landscape. Not innocent elements, but most of them were part of the, let's say, public debate already in papers and on television. And in this Koop Himmelblauw pavilion, we did a show and some lectures about our dream generation of the 50s. And so we collect photographs of openings of tunnels and bridges and excavations, etc. And we proposed completely new identities in the Dutch landscape. And we wrote even an issue or sort of fairy tale about a new ministry which will be founded in the new century, a ministry of acceleration and innovation, which is more or less concerned with, let's say, pushing the Netherlands into a sort of future society and keeping half of Holland out of the hands of the hippies. I tell you this because I think it's important to understand this as a background for a few of our works, that we really share the optimism of the 50s, that we really we are aware of our heritage, creating new land since centuries. And we are, let's say, living in a society which is quite violent against something new. I mean, I know in Germany it's even worse, but nevertheless, I'm talking about the Netherlands. One of the projects we proposed was a project we were asked to do research for the city of Rotterdam to create a new land in front of the Rotterdam-Den Haag coastline. As you might know, the Rotterdam port is already realized in that area, about 10 kilometers offshore. And we expected a sort of research how to create a new city without, because we knew that these mass numbers, 100 million houses, things like that, in suburban condition, they can hardly be managed. I mean, there is no urban strategy, no planning strategy to do such a thing, except maybe for the way they do it in America. And we were convinced that there was a possible possibility to create a new landscape, and just to offer this for colonization, for urbanism, but to create a landscape with a lot of differentiation, which might be a sort of coaching, guiding the typology of urban planning. In another way, we believe in creating nature to be eaten. For us, nature is not something to be protected, but to be transformed. And you have to understand this in a very Dutch way. First you make it a man-made nature, and then you colonize it. So, and you can also create nature and keep it for reservations or whatever. So our basic idea was how to develop a new landscape with maximum differentiation, and with a sort of heroic presence. Therefore, we used a specific and very simple Dutch engineering of landfill in front of the coast. In our proposal, we created islands from where sand excavation out of the North Sea can start, and sand can be pumped to the shore to create, and this will only take 3 years, to create a piece of land which is as big as Manhattan. It's about 20 kilometers between the port of Rotterdam and the city of The Hague. We didn't want the new land, the landfill, touching the old coast, so a small lake area remains in between. And our plan was based that instead of making this and stop it, you could also think about bringing more sand even to the shore to create an enormous dune about 80 meters high, and to wait for the November storm season, so the sand will be blown away like an enormous apocalypse, and nobody knows where, only God knows. And this is a sort of element which is big, which gives a sort of sentiment to the whole area, which is otherwise quite dull. and which can also create a tension for a new city. To keep the sand, to stop this process in certain areas, our proposal was to fill it up with very simple dune vegetation. This costs really nothing. You just take the seeds with a plane and the work is done, and then you bulldoze voids in it to protect it against fire. Buckthorn bushes and millions of rabbits. And with this simple activity we created a landscape in which there's a new sort of mangrove lake. There is a beach, there is a sort of a plain with these bushes, there is a dune, there is a sort of waterfront to the entrance of the port of Rotterdam. There is a former working island involved in it. So a few completely different identities will occur. The lake will turn into this mangrove ecology. The beaches, well, you know them, and they are created already in a few places in Holland, artificial dunes to protect the land behind, and well, they look like this. And then the only thing to be introduced could be a possible infrastructure. And then we think this might be interesting with very simple regulations as a sort of potential colonized city. Let's say nature waiting to be eaten. Take me, rape me, abuse me, occupy me. I mean, this was our main strategy. It is absolutely anti-hippie. So the city can grow here, and we did some research. I mean, don't cry for the design, but we did some research about because this was asked about the capacity of this possible urbanization, and we figured out it could be easily, let's say in Dutch densities, offer about 200,000 dwellings, including offices, leisure facilities, etc. So in our city, the starting point is this apocalyptic dune, 18 meter high, highest point in Holland maybe, to be seen from Rotterdam and The Hague. This grid of buckthorn bushes, introducing infrastructure with a giant parking, which is overwhelmed by this dune. And a city can grow there where main station or a highway is coming in. Sort of downtown area could be developed around such a dune arm. Next to, behind the boulevard, facing the Rotterdam port entrance, which is quite exciting because every minute there is about two or three ships coming in or out, and those ships are not small; they are incredibly big. And so we thought a very low rise city could grow there with wind force 8 every day a year. And this project was sent off to the Biennale in Venice a year ago. So for that reason we could build a few more models to test it. So behind this dune there is a creek and gully area which can be easily colonized by a more low-rise area along the creek. Cities or villages can occur. And then there is another highway directly related to the shore, in which Malibu look-alike identity can develop. So I think the message is the let's say the wish that that nature can be colonized in a way like original nature was colonized. When you go to Rio, I mean, I've seen a book with pictures of Rio, let's say 120 years ago. There were about 10 houses along the shore, and I mean, in a very short time, a real beautiful spot is colonized and turned into Copacabana, which it is now. So I think when there is not enough nature to be colonized, we can create our own nature and start this process again. Another project dealing with these hippie problems of the Netherlands. Even our Prime Minister is a hippie. I mean, England is now ahead because he is after hippie. Another project dealing with this is a project in Amsterdam. Amsterdam has a problem that, let's say, an enormous amount of people abandon the city, and they go because there is not enough family housing in Amsterdam, and very difficult to park your car, and there are also junkies around, too much tourists. So they leave the city and go to, for example, Almere, which is such a town looking like our model I showed. And the city now wants to let's say, to use abandoned spaces to bring opportunity for housing. People with families can even come back. We were asked to do such a place, which is called Borneo Sporenburg, with 2 islands or 2 piers actually. 20 years ago, this picture was taken. Now this is a, let's say, highly polluted, abandoned area. 3 plans were made to bring 7,500 houses, and we had to do, let's say, the 3rd plan for 2,500 dwellings. Nevertheless, the mayor made a deal with the people in The Hague with making these enormous amount of paper. And they make a deal that Amsterdam would build 7,500 dwellings within 3 or 4 years. And when we got the commission, I mean, the production of housing was so big that the mayor was really scared to do another plan with 2,500 apartments, and he said, well, the market is maybe dangerous for this kind of houses. I want you to make low-rise. And low-rise in Holland means row housing. And all of Dutch, let's say, housing production, the industry is based on making these row houses very cheap. Everybody can almost afford a house with a garden. And the problem was that the city invited developers which are specialized in this row housing. So they have their, let's say, the concrete molding systems based on row housing. So they immediately asked for us for row housing. So we had a problem that we had to produce a plan in which the density of row houses, which is normally in Holland maximum 30 per hectare, is 3 times more, about 100 houses per hectare, which is, let's say, 7-story high apartment blocks density. For that reason, we had to introduce a new typology. I will explain you a little bit. The row house has a living always on the floor, with the kitchen, and then the parent and children rooms, sleeping rooms are there, and the storage is over there. To keep a distance from the public, there is a small front garden which is more symbolic. It's about 1 or 2 or 3 meters, and then there is a back garden with a minimum privacy, and that's the row house, and it's a very efficient house. Well, it takes about 150,000 guilders, then you buy such a house. So, well, everybody buys such a house. When you don't buy it, you get it free. That's our social paradigm. You can imagine that when you make the density bigger, then you lose the gardens and the system will fail. So we introduced a new scheme in which the garden is in the house is proposed back to back. So this is a mirrored picture with the garden inside, with the parking inside, because in Amsterdam you are not allowed to make parking on the street. So the parking is always, let's say, on the private lot. And to catch the sun, you have a roof terrace, and which also affords you the view, the panorama over the water. So in this scheme, the living kitchen are on the first floor, from which the kitchen, for example, you have a view on the street, or from the living you have a view from the street. There's a studio or a sleeping room downstairs, and there's a sleeping room upstairs. And this typology was completely new. It was a little bit more inefficient when you consider the volume against the square meters of surface. But nevertheless, it was less than 10% expensive. And we got a commission, and we developed a scheme. At the moment, let's say 25% of the houses are built and occupied. In this scheme we calculated, and we took it very serious, the 100 houses per hectare as a sort of Stalinistic rule, and it fitted. Here is a prototype of the house I explained already. For example, this is a house which is the north facade of the street, so then the terrace, roof terrace, is in the south part of the house, and the sun penetrates through the diagonal and can even be seen from the street. So in this scheme, and that was very new in Holland, instead of making as much as possible windows, the architectonic philosophy since the 20s, Dutch architects are crazy about the light. They really worship it. And then the people fill all the glass with flowers and, well, you know it in Holland, curtains. We wanted to have a scheme in which the house is totally introvert, in a very rigid way, ordered in this waterfront. So there is a maximum of contrast, an even radical change. When you open the front door, then you have, bang, this giant space, this cosmic space of the River Eye with the smell of driftwood and gas oil, and you know these seagulls flying all around. And then, I mean, the house is totally introvert, and we really love that kind of radical contrast. So this is another photograph of a prototype. So we introduced a scheme with this celebration of the individual, with privacy as a certain rule for this new city. Well, imagine the row houses in this density won't have any privacy, so the privacy issue was very high on the agenda. That means that you have streets which are quite, let's say, like the streets of Prague. You can walk there like Kafka and nobody's watching you, you're totally anonymous. But nevertheless, through the facade you have a sort of idea about this hidden world behind. And like my grandfather's ears with hair coming out, sometimes flowers or trees are visible from the street. And against this collective space, which is also one of the issues of the Dutch hippie urbanism, like in Germany, you have to create public space. Public space is the most highest thing in life, because people can share. Against this, we made the concept that there is about the same amount of private space, totally individual. In our scheme, we calculated, we did some statistics, 50% of the builded area, the builded domain, can be a void, can be, let's say, air behind the facade. So this city will turn into a sort of Emmentaler Käse, Swiss cheese, with this hidden world of the individual. One of the best schemes was made by Christian Rapp, a German architect with an office in Amsterdam as well. And he made a proposal in which the patios are the most back part of the house. The house is, let's say, for 80% related also with windows to the patio. And you can enter the house by going through a very small alley, gap in between the houses, 90 centimeter. Then there's a fence, then you ring the door, and you go inside, and there, around the corner in the patio, there's the front door. So this is really the most, let's say, exclusive introvert scheme. Unfortunately, he only built a very small part now. To make a city born out of this simple grid, we propose to make 3 high-rise sculptural identities related to the landscape. And as in all our plans, the pump station, this is a pump station where they pump the water out. You know that every piece of Dutch land can exist because of pumping water out. So these are the cathedrals of our landscape made by my grandfather and his generation. So in our scheme, again, we faced one of those sculptural blocks to this, and others to the sunset or the central station, or in the X of an entrance of a tunnel, this one facing a dam. And so they play together with other big buildings in the environment and make a relation. So the low-rise is not only a ghetto of low-rise, but also, let's say, dealing with the surrounding city, which is more or less a 7-8 meter high city blocks. So by adding these sculptural buildings, we received the scheme, the final scheme, which is now under construction, in which wherever you walk through the streets, you have sort of strange connections between the streets, the blocks, and the blocks in the surrounding area. Can I have the next carousel? The scheme was really, we were really lucky that we could afford, let's say, 20% of the architects as international architects, with even Stephen Hall, Rem Koolhaas, Matteo, Ben van Berkel, Winnie Maas, Mirayes. This is the block called the chair. It's now, let's say, in development still by Stephen Hall. He is making a block of 200 different apartments in a U-shaped shape with the harbor inside. And because of the lack of public space, we could invest an incredible amount of money in 3 bridges. At the moment we are designing them. One of the bridges is 8 meter high, which is 3 times higher than the highest bridge in Venice. So you can climb it. From that bridge you have a view all over the roofscape, and you can enjoy the barbecue smoke coming out of all the patios at Saturday. To develop the scheme, we didn't have to make it more difficult, as I showed, because we used different size, width of the blocks. The government, the municipality, asked different developers, and we introduced, because there was not enough money at the let's say 1 year after the process started, we introduced a small piece of Belgium, which is a totally anti-hippie concept, in which every piece of land is owned and developed by a single owner. And this is totally taboo in the Netherlands. So the city didn't want to do this in an American way, so they made a list and organized a lottery, so nobody was able to buy the most exclusive piece, but let's say the distribution was organized by lottery, the Dutch compromise. But nevertheless, it will be done. And then the municipality introduced the social housing, that's the red, and the blue, and free market, which is the yellow, which I mean is an indication of the social housing is very cheap housing. We could introduce, let's say, a distribution of the architects all over the site. So any architect collaborating is working both in social housing and free market, in parcels which has a 40 meter size and 30 or 35 meter, is working on a corner piece or a middle piece, and this created a sort of, let's say, provocation or a challenge to the architects as a next layer in our scheme, which worked very, very well. For example, I give you an example. This guy, the orange guy, he is managing 4 of those lots, and he is high quality, and he is really pissed off when these guys are bullshitting this area. So, I mean, I tell you this in a very rough and American way, but we really meant it in that way because, I mean, architects, they sometimes they really collaborated, sometimes they teach each other, sometimes they punish each other, and this process was also necessary here. Another architect is the red one. This is Rem Koolhaas. He was distributed also 4 houses here, and because he knows that all the architect journalists make the pictures over here, he reduced his budget for this house to the half to spend there double. And I mean, this kind of, I tell you now very stupid stories, of course, but you understand that for facing specific problems, architects are able to, let's say, to shift the budgets to the place they really need it, and to make their a sort of hierarchy of problems and money. We, in a very old-fashioned way, we controlled the scheme only by asking them in every phase with their developers to bring in a model. This was a model, let's say, about 2 months after the starting process. And we built the whole scheme from day 1 in 6 meter size till now. So it's about 4 years. The model completely changed and transformed. But the result was that clients who didn't want to work, for example, this client worked with Herzog de Meuron, this is here, and he didn't like it because these Dutch architects were cheaper and more, let's say, convincing for him. Within this scheme, confronted with other clients and other architects, he was, and then facing the urban planners, he was almost, you know, threatened to continue because he otherwise really lose respect. So the model was also a way to have everybody responsible for the whole thing. So as I told you, the project is now under construction. I won't go into details. It's a project by Willem-Jan Neutelings. We ordered the floors, I mean the first floor to be 3.5 meter size, which is 1 meter more than the Dutch standard, with the car parks and patios, and they are all, let's say, fenced to have a more urban expression. Another project, which is a hippie related project. City of Utrecht is making a new plan for 30,000 dwellings, which is about 100,000 inhabitants in the next 15 years. And this is all suburban, all row housing typologies or related to that. This is 1/3 of the whole city of Utrecht is built again. And of course this was a problem in our society. So the compromise was that there would be a park of 300 hectares, a suburban park. This is the yellow part. Nobody knows how to build a park of 300 hectares because, I mean, even, let's say the Vondel Park in Amsterdam is 40 hectares. It's maybe one of the best parks in the Netherlands. It's really downtown, really, you know, part of urban culture and colonized already 1.5 century. And in suburban condition where everybody has a garden, parks are always isolated. They are very dangerous at night time. People use them for jogging, for playing football and keeping their dogs. I mean, it is more green than it can be considered as a park. And 300 hectare is, let's say, far more than the Central Park, which is really large. The program of the park was for about 80% fixed, and then there was a public competition. 10 landscape architect offices entered, and we did some research. What is the meaning of a park in our times, in suburban condition, where nobody is asking for a park, but only for political reasons parks are necessary. So part of the area was about 40 hectare of ecology. We stripped that. I mean, we made a very large strip of ecological strip, which is about 12 kilometers size. And like a spaghetti, we created a sort of loop within the contour line of the proposed area. Then we shaped it in a very English way to make it more romantic, with views on specific spots. And you can see that the park or this piece of grass, which is mainly ecological program, when it meets a highway or a railroad track or whatever, it's bridging it, so the strip is continuous above the infrastructure. And it will look like this. So it's just, let's say, vegetation like grass, cut it twice a year, so there's a lot of flowers and insects possible. This to create a boundary, because we think green really needs a boundary. Then the next borderline to be created is this water, which is a former river, which is, let's say, well, already 3 centuries dry land. The Dutch don't like water, so they make it dry, they pump it out. And we fill it in again with water, so that's... And then we created a 40 hectare area in the center. We make a giant wall around it. That was our proposal. So we have 3 border lines working together, making sort of interference of 3 lines. And we had in mind to keep a sort of 40 hectare very exclusive public, and to give the rest, all the, let's say, 250 hectare away to allotment gardens, cemeteries, sport facilities, school gardens, etc., which is a sort of junk green, necessary for suburbia, but not, let's say, having any identity, to make a very exclusive, high identifiable green, which is walled like a Kremlin or the hidden city, the forbidden city in China. So this is a reference, of course not to be taken serious, but the idea was that with these 3 borderlines, whenever you enter the area or cross the area, there is a certain center which is highly protected and isolated from the rest of suburbia and distinguished, offering identity of a park. The wall, the water, and the green strip continuous change when you take the sections. You have a lot of different design identities, design possibilities with them. So actually, that was the moment that the design was already strategic enough to be realized. And we got the commission. I will explain you a little bit more. At the moment we are busy to detail this wall, which is 6 meters high. We don't know yet how it will be looking like. Maybe a sort of hippie architecture, I don't know. We are most convinced about concrete covered with bricks, transforming into gates at certain points. But next year I can tell more about it. So in this center we called it the Kremlin. and we won the competition. And this is really for us a very important commission, because this is the biggest park ever made in Holland. And it takes maybe my whole life to finish it. The center of it is existing agricultural landscape. We use the parcellation of the polder as a sort of next green fossil pattern layout for the park inside. I won't explain you all the botanic qualities of it. Mainly these parcellation in which fruit trees and existing trees can be kept will result in a sort of grid of green, a sort of city look-alike pattern with voids, and this is grass, water and shrubs. This is the void pattern, for example. Existing farms are absorbed. And this Kremlin will be given to Hippie. We propose, and this is the reason we won the competition, that like a museum, there will be a conservator, how you say, the curator, responsible for the whole park, and he has a commission that he has to develop the park. So we start with green, with bushes. With microecology related to the soil, and he will keep it, he will maintain it, but also organize festivals, manifestation, and change it. And whenever he has budget, he can, for example, take away some of the shrubs and introduce a public garden. Like a museum curator is, asked to develop the collection and to keep the museum in let's say, in the newspapers. So, and this will result in a continuous process of being eaten, in an evolution of the center of the park. And maybe when I'm about 65, I will be the curator for 3 years. I don't know. This is nothing important. So here the model in which most of the park is green with a lot of sport facilities. The strip has a poetic element around it, and the wall cemetery in the Kremlin. A next project related to hippie commissions is a railroad track in Amsterdam. A new station, part of the infrastructure of the airport, connecting to the central station of Amsterdam. It's a boom town with a lot of telematica industries, and there are so many railroad and subway tracks, and also a harbor track next to each other, that there is a wasteland, and wasteland is not something hippies really like. So the municipality of Amsterdam is ordered to be re-elected, of course, a park. So this was an official commission to create a park in the dark underneath the railroad tracks. This was, let's say, when the project was halfway. The existing amount of railroad tracks is double. It's full shadow. Nobody is living there. There is no bar, no cafe, no nothing. And then they phone a landscape architect, of course. So here we see the scheme in which, let's say, only 2 gaps of daylight are possible in between the tracks. So I think this is a very political commission, really part of Dutch philosophy, Dutch compromise, totally surrealistic. So we proposed to make, and there was asked also parking program. We proposed to make, let's say, about half of the site with asphalt, and the other half with forest vegetation, which can stand shadow. But to use a floor pattern which is, let's say, funky or whatever, making a sort of contrast with the poetry of the columns, the 1,000 columns underneath the tracks. So there, and to paint the asphalt also with like a Roy Lichtenstein painting with white fluorescent paint. You normally make zebras out of it. So we have this white, black and green. And to bring in the green, tree trunks, stubs, you know, when a tree is cut, the thing which is remaining in the forest. And to make them out of cast iron. So we went through all of Netherlands and then we found the perfect model tree trunk. And well, this was really, let's say, the favorite one from our office. And we excavated it. And then we shaped it a little bit and finished it with a sort of polish mud. And then it was, and this was the earrings on top, one-to-one model. And then it was made in steel, cast steel, with an enormous lamp inside. And the lamp here, this was a dummy, projecting the earrings on the ceiling of the tracks. This winter the project was finished. At the moment they are making the vegetation, the green, and it was in many newspapers. Nobody understands why and what it was, you know, like this. We are really happy with this design because it somehow stepped out of the reality. And you know, imagine that that the area is partly surrounded by glass mirrored buildings that you always see 4 or 5 trains, and then mirrored, and then all the sounds, like very dynamic atmosphere. And then the floor is even increasing these sentiments. So we're really proud of the project. One of the columns will be painted in the same color as the cast iron, as a tree. And then, I mean, even in the newspapers was said that this was, you know, a former forest, and this was a project explaining that there was a former forest, and now there is such a bad thing like a highway infrastructure and the railroads. This project can hardly be photographed. I mean, you have to be there and feel like it works. Okay. Is it still clear? I will try to speed up a little bit. Bridges. Let's say last year our office was, I don't know why, was asked to make designs for bridges. I don't have any strategy to explain you, so we just do them. Just judge yourself. There was a competition for a bridge over the Amsterdam Canal. This was related to the Utrecht suburban scheme I already showed. After a lot of sketching, this is a bridge with a span of 120 meters. We had an idea to make an enormous, massive, strange, bizarre, heavy concrete shape in this landscape with a bridge hanging underneath. That was our idea. Just to, I don't know why, to have a sort of shapy motherfucker heavy thing there. Instead of a very elegant, transparent, dynamic, you know all these words, bridge. Dutch architects really like. One of the other sketches was a sort of Dali-inspired, heavy, weird trusswork bridge, which was a sort of melted, sort of like this, you know. And well, we were more and more inspired. At the end, we developed. Well, I cannot explain you everything, but a sort of bridge with a shell construction out of this, and then finally it was this bridge, which is a shell construction, evolving in, let's say, 3 weeks in this kind of shape, with a skin like this. And we work together with German engineers who built the bridges in Tokyo and Hong Kong. They are the biggest bridge constructors in the world, and they have incredible technology, let's say, how to innovate construction. But they also they really hate architecture bridges. So because of everything should be, let's say, honest. This is another hippie philosophy, of course, but shape should be honest and construction should be honest. But nevertheless, they have an incredible contribution to the design. Also shaping it with computers. At the moment, and well, this was a competition with 4 architects. We won the scheme, but we were too expensive, especially in the maintenance, because there was too much steel. Ben van Berkel and Foster, they were also entering the competition. So the city of Utrecht organized the second round we are busy with now, and they asked us to reduce 15 million guilders. And at the moment, this bridge is the result of this process. I don't explain this. This is not important. I'm sorry, but then there was a second bridge in this competition, which is a span over about 170 meters, where 2 canals come together, really close to the other bridge, where we produced a bridge which is more or less this shape. I don't know if it can be a snake, carrot, or whatever. A steel cable bridge, but due to the cables pulling on the stick in 3 directions, the shape of the column is changing, and this was calculated by these Germans, and we designed the top. So that, I mean, this part is ours. So this was really an excellent collaboration. Then after a while we also designed this piece. Very elegant. I mean, you can hardly see it on the slide. But the bridge is a little bit, let's say, in a curve, so the cables really work in an incredible way, and they are not only in one line. And we made the island a little bit bold, or I say, as if, you know, it's even pulling the surface up. So the cables really pull the surface, the skin of the column, and of the surface of the island. I don't explain you this. Nice, huh? Of course, this is a male symbol, etc. Blah blah blah. We like it. So we won the competition. But we are not able to do it yet, because we will be judged again when we reduce the budget, and the jury decide that the design is sort of demolished, and we are out, and then maybe Ben van Berkel wins. I don't know. Another bridge, we designed a garden in front of a bank office, which was a very formal garden, about 200 meters size, with red gravel, sandstone gravel, and bushes. Finally, this was the pattern of the bushes, I mean, garden design has no reason, like music, like poetry. It's just because it's funny or whatever. So I can tell you a lot of stories, but don't believe it. It's just, let's say, right from the heart or whatever. In this garden is there is a public park, surrounding the garden, and we introduced a path crossing the garden with a bridge over these formal bushes. No, hedges. I mean, I used the wrong word. Here you see it from the highest floor of the office. This is a 30-meter span. In the garden there are some German red sandstone where we made the gravel from to fight in roughness, the stupid death architecture of the bank office with the smooth facades, etc. and mirror glass. And then the bridge is, let's say, in the end of the strip, jumping over. This was a section model of the bridge. And there he comes, like a dinosaur, red colored, with skin, with all the construction inside. So we let's say, kept the construction very thin, so we needed a lot of beams and connections. So the skin occurred suddenly. Let's say the bridge has a rail and a bench for secretaries in this building to sit in the sun in lunchtime. And we had the idea to make the bridge really like a provocation. It's not gentle, you have to climb it. So we made a grill floor, we turned the grills upside down so you won't slip down, but you really have to climb. The slope is quite steep, and that makes the bridge also a sort of activity in the garden and part of the garden. There is no single piece equal. Of course, this is all computer produced. So this is one of my colleagues. He is landscape architect. Another bridge we recently. This is also a competition. We won. This competition was for the extension of a zoo in the north of the Netherlands. The city where the zoo is could only afford a new extension on the other side of the city. So there was a need for a pedestrian connection from the old zoo to the new zoo, about 1 kilometer, right through the city center. It's a very crazy idea. But the zoo said, when we have no a passage above the center, we leave the town. We go away. So this was the compromise. And then with money from Brussels, competition was organized, and let's say 20 million guilders for realizing the project. We won the competition because we avoided to make some architectonic or technical statements, although they are involved, of course. We had in mind to make a sort of passage with a protection for the pedestrian made out of slates. And the slate is always different. I mean, the section of the viaduct is changing everywhere. So the underneath part is out of concrete and easy to make, even in modules, and the top part is out of steel and with these slates. By making these slates and the roof, I mean, we introduced a sort of horizontal Eiffel Tower effect in the city through the center. Well, we are still busy with the technology, how to add the slates on the steel and to keep it there, which is not so easy. So, as I told you, these projects are totally, I don't know where they are related to, but well, this is a section. At the moment we are doing the tender drawings for this project. Is it too quick? No? Then there is another bridge project. So with this competition we explained that the public will not be protected against the rain, only symbolic by this roof of slates, giant pieces from Norway. And they keep, let's say, well, they keep their contact relation to the city. So it's more, I mean, we really thought that this was the best way to make such a public passage, not on the floor. Then the bridges on Borneo Sporenburg we are developing now. Last week we got them within the budget. I explained to you about that they were about 80 meters span and 8.5 meter high. Very steep bridges, really nice. They're let's say 3 meter size, really pedestrian bridges. We easily make a skin out of well, steel frame, construction frame, which is touching the water, and there is a sort of jellyfish floating in the water where the bridge is, let's say, not touching the real water. Well, I brought some sheets, but there is no overhead projector, but so next time. Yeah, then I will explain you the last project. As you see, I mean, in Holland there is a tremendous amount of work. We work now with 30 people in the office. 2 years ago we were really, you know, complaining that then we had an office already with 45 people, and we really had to start it a new way of working to keep the office small enough to be flexible, to keep our qualities. And the projects we are working in are really combinations of public planning, housing, designing, architecture, landscape, and we really like to mix those elements and to take the borders between those disciplines. 2 years ago we did an exhibition. We were asked to do an exhibition in a storefront in New York, Manhattan. We went there to study, we didn't want to show projects, to study landscape in Manhattan. We were, of course, like you are, worshipping Central Park as a piece of urban activity, colonization, really poetic. But we were also, let's say, amazed about the bad quality of the green in Manhattan. I mean, since the block is a sort of total world of freedom, every street, every public space is so-called cultural heritage. I mean, you can buy any lot of land, demolish any building and build a new skyscraper, but you cannot change anything in public space. This is very strange. For us, landscape is very cheap. It's the most cheap, or God gives the landscape. When you make it dry, then it starts growing. And landscape is the most flexible part and the most transportable part in Holland, for example. It's the other way around. Let's say the blocks are hardly to be changed, and landscape can be changed easily. So we wanted to look for how does it work when you change it a little bit. Then we got I don't know what the name was, Washington Square or Madison Square. It's in front of the Flatiron Building, which is an ugly Olmsted park from the last century, with a so-called romantic path. I mean, it's, let's say, when you see the English gardens in here, I say this is not really something. I mean, I'm not against English landscape, gardens at all, but here it doesn't make sense. And we proposed as a sort of research, you know, very innocent, to bring the park back in the block, and to say, well, the only law here is that they should be made green, so whatever lunch, because this is a lunch area, whatever lunch activity or lunch bar or facility will be created, let's say half of the volume should be green. I mean, this is what we just ordered, and we figured out what happened and made a sort of fantasy of green blocks, more or less related to the grid pattern. And we face a road, a traffic divider on Broadway, opposite of Flatiron, with a Sequoia iron building. Then another thing, we didn't understand why Mies van der Rohe made a setback on Park Avenue. The Seagram building is, you know, stepping back, creating a square where nothing is going on. Only 2 flag posts and 2 pieces of water. And we had in mind to research what could be a vertical skyscraper as green. So we proposed to copy his building, only the construction, with an elevator and a pipeline bringing water from the roof down to the vegetation on the facades. This is about, just in front of the Seagram building. Made some collages, I don't have a slide. And here we see a model. Then each double floor has vegetation growing. Imagine inside there is an incredible nice void, a cathedral of green, very high. And in the top there is a water collector, a golden bulb, with a pipeline going down and bringing water irrigation to all the vegetation. And there are 2 gondolas for cutting the topiary facades. So very simple building. You can use the elevators and watch the park in green and in the space on every 2nd floor. And this to bring fresh air into the Seagram building. I mean, these projects were very important because they somehow more or less evaluate in our real work. Last project I show you is the square in Rotterdam. We started in 1992, and within 2 months finally the square will be completed. The city of Rotterdam, which is a skyline city since the mid-80s, has a parking garage with a useless roof. The roof was collapsing and the city wanted to make a new roof, and we proposed by coincidence not to repair the roof but to peel all the heavy layers, the concrete, and to replace a very ultralight floor. So that means that you have a square in the city heart for free. And the city liked the project, and we got a commission. Here you see the construction principle, the peeled floor, the peeled roof of the parking garage with the steel frame above, keeping the floor of a new square. We designed the square really flat with a mosaic of different materials, and halfway the process the city was kidnapped or blackmailed by MGM cinemas. They said, we want to have a cinema on top of this square, otherwise we go out, we go to the periphery, and you can forget your downtown night activity because they have a monopoly in cinemas in Rotterdam. So the city decided to have the cinema on the square. It's a multi-cinema with 7 cinemas in one building, colonizing one of the corners of the square. Nevertheless, we could survive this. We could build a square around it as an exact, let's say, an exact contour line of the parking garage underneath. And we had in mind to create a square which was surprising the people, which is non-programmed, which is changing during the day, during the seasons, and where people are really aware when they step on it. to bring back their, let's say, intelligence. We really believe that in Dutch public space, because of compromised society, every piece is ordered for a specific use, and making people brain deaf. I mean, public space is not public anymore, and we want to escape this in the square. The square was, here we see, let's say, the changing, mainly done also in metal, because this is a really light material, and at daytime it really reflects like hell. You need sunglasses. In the morning it's really silent and almost crying, and at nighttime it's let's say reflecting a million lights in the city. So this is a very important part of the square. Well, parts of it have been published many times already, so we go through it. The shadow parts are done in concrete with epoxy top layer. Within the epoxy top layer there are silver leaves. In springtime or in autumn, really making surreal effects with real leaves on the floor, which give an amazing, bizarre effect. The center of the square, which is activity zone, is more or less out of wood and metal. We use 2 types of wood and about 4 types of different perforation with illumination underneath. So when you walk over the square, the dots on your body change into, let's say, zebra print, to sort of Roy Lichtenstein print, and then suddenly you are a silhouette. So they bring a lot of changes to the people walking over. Parts of the square, the perforation is downwards, so the square is very slippery and can be used for sporting, car racing, biking, you know, skating, all these kind of things. And then about 8 places the planks can be taken off for electricity supply, water supply, to organize festivals, etc. on the square, and just a plug-in system. Then part of the square is sponsored by the harbor authorities. That part is done in Norwegian granite with a few hundred fountains as an activity zone for kids. Fountains are, let's say, organized or working with the software, with computers, and there are 4 programs during the day changing, let's say, the composition of fountains all the time. People run through it, get wet, etc. At nighttime they are really high fountains, just for looking to. There's also a fork installation in this strip, and there is a spring going underneath the square with high pressure air bubbles, and the air bubbles, they collect a lot of green light, which is the illumination of the water. Then on the top on the square there are 4 hydraulic lampposts, dinosaur big really things. They are not only elegant, but they are also heavy, with very small brains. Let's say the foot is about 6 meters, and they are 35 meters high when they are, let's say, right up. And we always had a sort of Thunderbirds idea about the square. You know, when you have this heavy monster of the cinema, 18 meter size and 25 high, making a lot of shadow for the square. Then those 4 hydraulic lamps, like a mechanic ballet, they really fight the dominance of the cinema, and they can be put in position by the public. So even my daughter is, you know, we go there every second day, and I bring her to school and we walk there, and she can push the buttons of the computer, program, choose the lamppost and program the position. And you know, at night time you can change the light over the square and even illuminate your lover when he is or she is on the other part of the square. Bring the you know, like the spotlight to the girl. I mean, the square is about boy meet girl. And this is an enormous success. Here the dinosaur comes to the square. Of course, the people of Rotterdam, they like the wood, the metal, the hydraulics, because they are so incredible proud on their harbor. I mean, everything related to Rotterdam harbor and to the new bridge and to the river is really exciting for them, and they are proud on it. And they hate Amsterdam. You know, there is always this, you know, proud on Rotterdam, hating Amsterdam, stupid groovy city with all the bars and terraces. We have a very rough city with beautiful harbor, port area, ships, and very windy. You know, this kind of sentiment is quite important to understand this square as a sort of, let's say, the right square on the right spot. I won't make such a square in London or in Amsterdam at all. At the moment, the lamps are really overworked. This is the machine or the panel where you can program the lamppost. Then the ventilation towers of the garage are extended till 15 meter high. They are fenced with a very narrow width and illuminated at night time. And there is a bench which is really huge. This is how we design it, just make it one-to-one and then work for a year on it. This is about 80 meter long, one extruded section with the rail. And the entrance of the parking garage with broken glass. Very nice when you walk in, because then you see the world through eyes, or the other way around. They are always occupied with kids. This is, let's say, the real emotion of the square, completely eroded by these skate boys. And then I think the real quality of the square is that although it's very empty and really smooth, the surface is it's wood, rubber, steel, epoxy. It's always changing in an incredible way, and it's a little bit elevated above the street level, working as a stage. People are like audience, people are like actors, and it's used in an incredible different way. So in the morning it's really ice cold, no emotion, people start hating it, and then at daytime, you know, it really comes alive. Always people walking over the squares, using the diagonals. When this is at shopping time, 80 meters of Rotterdam people eating French fries, reading papers. You know, at night time, festivals, bands are playing there. You know, and the illumination makes it really bizarre and nice. And then the strange thing is that whenever people walk over the square, they always step in these circles of light. And they feel a little bit like, well, I don't know, like Mick Jagger or whatever. Okay, I will stop here. Thank you very much. If that's necessary, it's up to you.
I know time is running a little bit late, but maybe there are some questions? Is there a microphone? Or? Sorry. Can you just wait for it? Do you have a microphone?
Yeah.
Hello. I'd like to ask you this question, and it's a bit boring, but it's about money. How do you get, and how are your projects funded? Because in this country, money for public space is so hard to get hold of.
Yeah, I'm never busy with creating money, but I think Holland is now in the economic boom. Totally opposite from England, let's say last years. Now England is getting up. And I mean the investment in public space has always been quite high. And the money for housing is totally commercial. So these developers building suburbia, they invest but Holland is very rich at the moment. Too much money even.
The money for the Rotterdam Square, did that come from a developer or
No, that's a
public
city.
funds?
But this money was, the square was for free because the city had to renew the roof of the garage, since they were sued so many times by car owners when concrete was falling on their cars. So, and our plan was an alternative for bringing a complete new roof. So we used, or let's say, renovated the existing structure. Of course it's now a little bit bended, but the square is the result. So this was for free. Quite important in Holland.
Alex, maybe you can pass it on. While you're getting the mic, please, can you pass it? While you're getting the microphone, maybe I'll ask one question. One of the things that seems to be receiving a lot of attention is this whole question of the suburbs, and you paid certain amount of attention to that. Is it possible that you could say, in terms of some of the research that you've made, what are some of the more interesting issues that are being discussed or developed in relation to the suburbs that's different than the more traditional suburbs that we know? Where do you think is the contribution in that area?
Well, I think a few architects from my generation are at the moment really able to, and also busy, but also able to introduce new typologies for housing. I mean, the row house typology was and is totally dominant. Then we'll say about 95% is row housing.
But that's
and offices like Winima's and WRV Koolhaas introduce new typologies. This, let's say, within the same budget, a completely new way of organizing the floor plans.
But that's still part of the same kind of tradition of housing typology. I mean, in terms of the relationship to urbanism, or the housing to something that is linked to this idea of the outdoor space, or the space that is more than the housing typology. Do you think there is...
No, but I think architects at the moment, the biggest contribution to this suburban development is the change of typology, which can also be understood as a more diversity within the housing. They cannot change, let's say, the mass culture of these suburban areas. They can hardly change densities, because this is, I mean, ordered by market laws. So I will say the contribution, and we made many statements about it, the contribution of architecture in this is really bad. I mean, there's hardly any contribution. Maybe on paper, but not, let's say, in reality. And then, of course, well, you know, there's a few housing experiments within the cities, which are more or less city blocks, like the MWRV Wozoko complex. But this is not a suburban. This was not suburban commission. But I'm very pessimistic about the contribution of architects to housing. And we made even the model showing with a booklet of 50 different suburbia in Holland, showing that architecture make really a area, because they want to make very funny, very unique facades, and yeah, without budget, without any cultural background.
But how come when you have the government or the state that has so much financial possibilities, the interface between that financial control of the state and the private initiative, that kind of interface doesn't seem to produce a different kind of tension, because you're still talking about the typology, which is to do with the developer.
Yeah.
But somehow the area that seems to be interesting is how the developers also have to confront the city or the authorities in some way, and this is a little
But
bit...
I see really no progress, so I'm very negative. I mean, the thing is that there was no moment in Dutch history when we were that rich. There was no moment when in history which produced that incredible amount of change in the landscape, and we make it in a very ugly way. So let's say within 15 years, this mass production will be over, because infrastructure investment had been made. Everybody has a single house, everybody, and then we won't build for half a century anymore. And then we face back to what we do now, and we say, well, this was not the most heroic part of our architect history. Like in the 20s and in the 60s, when there was no money, architecture made really progress. I mean, the development of architecture was tremendous.
Alex.
But now, I mean, I have to tell you, this is really we are in a facade architecture climate in suburbia, and suburbia is most of the commission.
I had a question about the Schouwburgsplein and how the...
Is that switched off now, or is it turned on?
It's on, no?
Yeah.
The Schouwburgsplein project, you know, good architect, the cinema, good landscape designer, blah blah. How come the cinema is so badly positioned? It seems very clear that the shadow is a real problem, no?
The shadow of the cinema, yeah, it's a real problem. In springtime and in autumn, it's let's say reaching the bench even. And and it's not only that. I mean, they put the cinema building in an X, really facing the tower of the city hall, from the let's say the west part of Rotterdam, which is the working class part of Rotterdam, residential. So this cinema killed more than the square, the sunshine of the square. Yeah, and what happens then? You are really protesting and fighting with the architect, and he don't give a shit, and then the city parliaments decide, because they are blackmailed. They think when they don't say yes, then the cinema is leaving. And of course there was some public debate so there is in Rotterdam a committee, how it's called? Centrum Beeldende Kunst, so Center for Visual Arts, etc. They made some protest evenings against this cinema, but no chance. And then the city even succeeded in raising money with the cinema, and then, you know, MGM is in charge. But nevertheless, I think the cinema is a contribution to the square. At the end, I'm happy with it, not with all of the architecture with it, of it, but I think it makes sense.
Mostly at night.
Yes, it's true. Because the building is, because the garage cannot support the building, because the garage is not has no foundation; it's floating. So the building is on the corner. It's like a ship, you know, like Titanic. The garage could sink, and for that reason, the cinema is made out of steel frame, and every cover is plastic. So it's let's say a material with no dignity. And that's a problem, because we made half the square out of galvanized steel, which is a very tricky material. It can develop a very unique dignity when you push it or use it in a nice environment. But when the environment is already, let's say, a plastic roof material and bad Rotterdam architecture, then you're getting over the edge. And that's what's happening at daytime a little bit. But nevertheless, the Rotterdam people, they like it. Yeah, that's true. I'm not consequent.
Yeah? Can I sum
When you were designing the square some years ago, you wrote a lot about the fact that you believe that the urban park as such is dead. I was therefore quite surprised to see you were designing this exclusive park in Utrecht. Have you changed your views about it?
No. No, I think for England this is a very difficult statement. Because I mean, English culture is so related to gardens and parks, and I mean, and you cannot say things like I said for England, for example. But the thing is that landscape architects in Holland are totally abused by. I mean, when there are two phone calls, one phone call is, you know, a client, for example, an airport or a large industry or a municipality, and then they cry and they say, well, the world is so bad and our buildings are so nasty. Can you make a nice garden around it? And can you heal the world? I mean, this is what, let's say, half of our telephone calls are about. And then after 3 years of work, you get really sick of this. Because my grandfather, he was a landscape architect, more or less in a sort of civil engineering rule, discipline. and he made heroic landscapes, you know. And I always thought, well, this is what I want to make. And then all these crying hippies on the phone, and that made me more aware that landscape architecture and parks are not, I mean, meant to be, let's say, used for a sort of cultural heritage or a sort of use as the English parks are used, really public where people play football. But I mean, they are just used in Holland for to have a suburban area with, in the folder, in the brochure, to sell it, 30% green. Yeah, okay. And nobody, I mean, for the brochure you need 30% green, otherwise it won't sell. But have you ever seen a nice activity in a suburban Dutch park? I never saw it, and people are really afraid going there. I mean, all the people, women, they don't go there. So that was the reason of my statement. And of course I was very young, so I exaggerated a little bit.
Is that why you're building so many bridges?
I don't know. I don't know. We are still not constructing all of them, so I wait a little bit for making conclusions. At the moment we designed a few, but well, first we wait a year and then we will see. I am a civil engineer, but then more or less related to agriculture.
Oh, well. But I think this thing about belief, I think maybe it's a little bit sharp because, I mean, landscape architects, especially in Holland, they are very much related to the hippies who gave the commission. I mean, it was the whole planning culture during the last 30 years, and I don't know, in a way it seems to me a little bit like...
you know, of course I am not against hippies. I mean, they really made something special out of Amsterdam, and
it's coming out.
Yeah, and they offer us a lot of freedom, and well, we should worship them. But now they have the best positions. They live in the best environments, and they really bullshit public commissions for urban planning, for landscape, etc. Because they say no. It's a niet generation. If they have a brake on acceleration, they are only protecting. They are crying, and this is what I'm not. You know, I'm not. Sometimes I really feel, and I'm not the only one. You know, we are not part of that level. I'm not. And although I am educated in green and nature, and I really make a lot of nature, I don't understand them.
I mean, it seems a lot like the opposition against Wageningen, I would say.
Wageningen is the place I studied, of course. This was full of hippies, yeah.
Yeah. So, in a way, it seems like, yeah, you really have to confront that and get away from these parents, you know?
Yeah.
But I mean,
but I don't agree on that, because there are many. Nowadays there are even newspaper articles, and in which, I mean, last week there was a major research, and they figured out in Holland, because they're very keen on that my generation is not, let's say, taking part in media, in cultural, institutes. So they are not represented. We are a dead generation. We don't exist. So the Dutch television and newspapers, journalists, museum directors, you know, even the artists who have commissions, they are all, let's say, a hippie generation. They are in charge. And that's true because, let's say, my generation came on the market with 20-year age and a lot of ideas in the early 80s, and then the economy was really bad. There was no employment, and institutes really, you know, kicked out people. So they grew up without jobs, and they are not in charge. So now there are articles and research projects because this is a problem generation. That's what the hippies think, and by, you know, even statistic research, they prove that this is true, and which is for me again a statement that we have to fight against them. And you can also understand Winnie Maas's office a little bit in that context. I mean, Dutch housing is totally regulated, and this regulation is part of their philosophy. People should have enough gardens, should have enough daylight, should have enough this and that, to make an honest society. And then they are joking with it, you know. They make it literally, and then strange architecture appear out of it, and they say, well, this is very strange. But I mean, it's playing with their rules. So I mean, it's about the generation. You are also part of the post-hippie generation, although the school is totally hippie. Well, think about it. Let's go drinking, yeah?